Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me, as always, is Mike. How are you doing? And I'm just going to warn you that there's only one right answer to this. How are you doing, Mike?
Good?
No, that's not the right answer. Let's see if Justin can get it. How are you doing, Justin?
Well?
Neither one. Ask me how I'm doing, guys.
How are you doing, Chris?
I don't care how you're doing.
I'm doing marvelous.
This is what I was trying to avoid.
I thought you were getting Mike for grammar, because Superman does good. Mike does well.
That's what I meant. I'm doing good. I'm out there doing good in the world.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Is that not how you took the question? I'm sorry.
It wasn't, but I see my mistake now. I should have.
Yeah, pay attention. Anyways, as always, we like to start off every episode talking about what is on our minds, which is usually the media that we have been watching or reading. Then for our feature review this week, we will be reviewing the newest installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Captain Marvel.
Right, and don't forget
it's pronounced Marvel.
No, Justin, there's a whole scene in the movie where they talk about...
Did you watch the movie, Justin?
Yeah, come on. Do we need to watch this again before we even start the review?
Yeah, let's stop. I need a second go.
Okay.
All right, now that Justin's actually seen the movie, we're back. So don't forget that each month we review a film from the Criterion Collection, which is voted on by you, the listeners. So go check out our latest episode on The Princess Bride, and then look forward to our new review this month on Safety Last.
Yeah, and if you want to vote in our polls or stay up to date with what we're watching next or send us questions to answer on the show, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can also send your questions into casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, as always, please don't forget to go onto iTunes, give us a 5-star rating, write us a review, let us know how much you love us, how awesome we are. It will feel really, really good for us, emotionally.
Yeah, we need all the acknowledgement we can get.
Please.
And, of course, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you listen to podcasts on.
Yeah, we're there. And if you find one that we're not on, let us know.
Yes.
All right, and before we get started in what has been on our minds, I wanted to take a minute to talk about our friends, Real Outreach. That is REEL Outreach at realoutreach.com. And this is a charity organization that collects money to send underprivileged kids to movie theaters and buy them popcorn and a drink and make sure they have a good time. And they usually do this with kids' movies. This last year, they did Black Panther, Infinity War, and most recently, Captain Marvel.
Yeah. They just had a big campaign for Captain Marvel that was super successful. They took a bunch of kids to go see it. They got a bunch of toys donated from Hasbro, like Captain Marvel toys that I think they were struggling to get. Like, maybe they were sold out. They're, like, difficult to find.
Right.
And Hasbro just, like, shipped them a bunch of toys to give out at the screenings as well. So they're doing a lot of super cool stuff.
Yeah, really cool stuff. So check them out, realoutreach.com. Help send some less fortunate kids to the movie theaters to get some of those awesome memories that I'm sure all us movie nerds cherish dearly.
Yeah, and I suggest you go follow them on either Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, because when they do these, they put up pictures of these kids that just have the biggest smiles on their faces. So it really shows you how much fun these kids are having and how important it really is.
Absolutely. So go do it.
And that's all we've got. Are we ready to move into what is on our minds?
Of course.
Sure am.
You on the march!
All right, Chris.
Yes?
I choose you.
Like Pikachu.
Yep. What's in your mind?
What's on my mind? This week, I went and saw a movie that just premiered at Sundance. I went and saw Apollo 11, which is a documentary about the first moon landing, as you can tell by the title. So this is something that I've seen recreated or actually seen dozens of times before, and I was actually pretty worried that it might turn out to be something that you would see when you go visit the Houston Space Center, like one of those documentaries that's, not super interesting, but gives you facts and stuff like that. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong about that, because this film was restored from 65 millimeter footage, found footage, in fact, that the was like deep in the National Archives somewhere. They also found like 11,000 hours of audio while they were searching through this. So just a lot of new stuff that they put together, and they actually restored it. So it looks like it was shot very recently, other than like the period clothing, and not 50 years ago. And when it's edited all together, it really gives you a sense of the immediacy and the tension, even though you know how this story ends, right? I think the music is really great in this. It adds to the sense of tension without really overshadowing the actual event. So the one drawback I have is that I wish I had been able to see it in the IMAX. Unfortunately, I think it only had a week-long run in the IMAXs, and then Captain Marvel came in and booted it out. But hopefully they do another run. I'm really hoping for that, because I would like to go in and see it again in IMAX and get the full effect. Ultimately, this is my favorite film of the year so far. It's remarkable that this film even exists, that they found the footage and redid it. It reminds me a lot of They Shall Not Grow Old, and the power that like restoring film can have on past events. And it really gives me a greater understanding and appreciation of this remarkable event that happened, and it's just really great. I really enjoyed it.
So let me ask you, I have not seen Apollo 11 yet, but I have seen a Criterion Collection documentary. Well, it's not a Criterion Collection documentary, a documentary released by the Criterion Collection called For All Mankind, which takes actual footage filmed by astronauts in space as they are like on their mission and floating around and doing stuff. So let me ask you, have you seen that at all? That documentary For All Mankind?
I have seen it, but it's been a very long time ago. So comparing the two for me would be difficult. I remember liking For All Mankind quite a bit. What I can tell you is the footage in this film, I saw things in new ways that was really remarkable that I hadn't seen before. And it may be that it's all in For All Mankind that I just can't remember it. But it's so crisp and so clear. And the thing I probably would tie it to the most is First Man, which we all went and saw last year. And I think that we get all those shots that are in First Man, except for real. And it all looks as good as First Man, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So does First Man look pretty, like the set and the actual like place they are in First Man and the way it's portrayed in space? Is it pretty similar to this documentary, like on the surface of the moon and stuff?
Yeah, I would say that it is closer. So they shoot a lot of stuff that's on the ground, that's, earthbound. They shoot a lot of the crowds that were out there that kind of give you an idea of how big of an event this was.
Yeah.
Once you get to space, because you can't take 65 millimeter cameras with you, or it's very difficult.
Right.
It does start to. It's not quite as good as the earthbound shots are, but in fact, the cameras are like only shooting like 1 frame a second, but the quality of those 1 frames per second are so amazing and so great that yes, it does look, to me, and from what I can remember, as good as First Man. Yes.
So when we reviewed First Man, I don't remember who exactly of us had the opinion that we wanted a little bit more of the how did they do that stuff from First Man, essentially, like a little bit more of like having the problems and solving the problems. Would this film fill in that gap a little bit?
Absolutely. There is a moment at the beginning of it where it talks about the men going to space, and they do kind of like a picture flashback, and they show like the families that all these men have and all the experiences that these men have been through, and that kind of puts the stakes in there, because all the families care about their loved ones going into space and stuff. But ultimately, it shows a lot of the people in the rooms that are guiding them on their mission. In the Houston Space Center, there's a lot of that. Like, so for instance, they're landing on the moon, and there's a moment as the fuel starts going low, or there's a 1202 warning, and they talk about that as it's popping up and stuff like that, and they're like, so it's very detailed, yes, and in that way it is, and they're using the audio from the 11,000 hours, I suppose, so it's really authentic, and Men on a Mission is what I would say, and definitely whoever was the one that had that complaint would love this film for sure.
Yeah. So is it like They Shall Not Grow Old in the sense that we're only hearing authentic audio from the time, or are there also like talking head interview things?
No talking head interviews at all.
Okay.
So it's just
That's cool.
authentic audio. There's like a timer, like 20 hours till takeoff type of thing. So that's the only information that wasn't on the original footage that they're giving you, or like even the 1202 warning is a thing that pops up on the screen, and you can get that information from the audio, but like with that little timer, and kind of gives you the gauge of what's going on in there. So, but most of it is all original audio, or it is all original audio. So yes, very good.
It's interesting the timing of this coming out because Al Reinert, who made For All Mankind and wrote the screenplay for Apollo 13, died last year. I think towards the latter half of the year. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I did not. Well, if I did, I forgot.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't do a whole lot in film, but he did those two things, so he's kind of got his name etched into certain places. I actually met him one time / had a phone call conversation with him once,
Awesome.
Which is why his name is a bit more like sticks in my head, and I remember that sort of thing. I think had I not done that, he wouldn't be a name on my radar, right?
Yeah, were you prank phone calling him?
Yeah. I asked him if his spaceship was running. No. He was at a film festival that my film Camino was in, and for some weird reason he stayed and watched my film, and someone got me in contact with him because he said he really liked it, which is super weird, and I don't know if he's just being nice, but whatever.
Cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So that is what I've been watching, and I really actually recommend both of you guys if you have the opportunity to watch it, because I would love to talk to you about it, especially Mike, with the comparisons to For All Mankind, and Justin too.
Yeah, I've also seen For All Mankind. It's been a while though, so it would be difficult to comment.
Right. Yeah. So I would love for both of you guys to watch, and we can talk about it further. But Justin, what's been on your mind?
So on my mind this week is a film that I've been wanting to watch for a long time, especially after I think it was 2017 when this film came out, seeing A Ghost Story, and then last year watching The Old Man and the Gun with Robert Redford. I watched Ain't Them Bodies Saints, which is from David Lowery, who directed the films I just mentioned.
Nice.
So Ain't Them Bodies Saints, which is a weird title. It doesn't roll off the tongue very well. I have to think about it every time I say it. It is about a couple expecting a baby, and they commit some sort of robbery, and they get caught, and basically he takes all the blame and goes to jail, and she stays free. And years later, she's still waiting for him with their kid, and he breaks free from jail, but basically it ends up there's people after him, and there's no way for them to be together that isn't bad for her and their daughter, right? So it's kind of this plot that I think we've seen before, and it doesn't sound too exciting when you break it down that way, but I think that the Texas setting and time period, the cinematography and the tone all make this film feel really unique, and even more unique than I thought it would, because I had heard a lot of comparisons of this film to Terrence Malick, that he was just copying Terrence Malick. I didn't hear that from a lot of people, but I heard it from one person, and I guess that kind of informed my opinion. But I think it's a pretty unique film, and yeah, have either of you guys seen this?
No, actually, I think this is the only David Lowery movie I have yet to see.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen it either.
I think I haven't seen the one that's before this, and I haven't seen Pete's Dragon yet.
I've seen Pete's Dragon. I may not have seen the one that came before Ain't These Bodies Saints. What is that?
Let me look up.
Sorry, you sound like you knew it.
No, that's why I said the one before. To try to not have to know it. So the one he did before Ain't Them Bodies Saints was Saint Nick. He did a lot of shorts around that, but the feature before that, and his first feature, is Saint Nick from 2009. So I have not seen that one.
Okay, yeah, me neither. But I have seen Pete's Dragon and all the other ones.
Yeah, I'm super interested in Pete's Dragon just because it seems like the real outlier in his work. Although having seen The Old Man and the Gun and Ain't Them Bodies Saints, A Ghost Story also feels like a bit of an outlier. Yeah,
I think Pete's Dragon and Old Man and the Gun are probably more similar than any of the other two I can think of to compare of the ones I've seen.
Yeah. Well, so far I'm really liking David Lowery. He hasn't really blown me away with Old Man and the Gun or even Ain't Them Bodies Saints, even though I really liked both of them. I think A Ghost Story is his best film I've seen so far, but he hasn't made a bad one yet that I've seen, right? And he's a director that really interests me. I think he's kind of achieved that rank of whatever he does next, I'm already interested in before I know anything about it.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me ask.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you about Bradford Young's cinematography. We just talked about him last week in Most Violent Year. How is the cinematography in this?
The cinematography is awesome. I think that's something he's achieved in all of the films that I've seen so far, is that he's got very good looking films. Like, he knows how to shoot a beautiful image. And obviously with this, he had the help of Bradford Young, who, had awesome cinematography on Most Violent Year, and then of course Arrival. As well as plenty of other things. He's really great. So if you like Bradford Young's cinematography, you're gonna like Ain't Them Body Saints cinematography, because it's along his lines.
Didn't he shoot solo?
He did.
He did, yeah. Bradford Young.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
he did, and I think it might just be the least remarkable cinematography that I can think of.
I think Solo's a pretty good looking movie, though.
Yeah, it was fine. I think. I don't remember anything that stood out to me cinematography-wise, although I wasn't really paying attention to that, to be fair, in Solo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think really all the Disney Star Wars era movies, I think all technically look beautiful, but that's a whole nother topic.
Right. The last thing I want to say about David Lowery in general, and definitely Ain't Them Body Saints, is that I really like that he makes films without a obvious or a very majorly important antagonist. They seem to be relatively antagonist free, or like the main character is their own antagonist, and it's not like a pressing antagonism ever. They're all very intentionally toned and intentionally paced in a like less than or in a slow way, I guess, in a less than urgent way is what I would say. And I really like that about all of his films.
Well, maybe not so much Pete's Dragon, but yeah, the other ones, totally. I agree. I haven't seen Ain't Them Body Saints, clearly, but
yeah. Well, I think that both Chris, have you seen Ain't Them Body Saints?
I have not. No.
I think both of you guys would like it, so I would definitely recommend it to both of you guys, especially if you liked Old Man and the Gun and A Ghost Story.
Yeah, it's certainly on my list. It's been on my list for a long time. So
I like A Ghost Story much better than the Old Man with the Gun, but I like The Old Man and the Gun pretty good as well too.
Yeah, that's the boat that I'm living into.
Yeah, it's the only boat to be in, really, if you've seen both the movies, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, you're just drowning.
Yeah,
and not in a boat at all.
Yeah,
if you don't feel that way.
Exactly.
Cool, but yeah, so that's it for Ain't the Body Saints. It's on Hulu actually, which is a lot of people have Hulu, so it's really easy.
I have Hulu.
Get on there and watch.
Justin, I have Hulu. I could watch this tonight.
You could watch it right now, although I don't.
Okay,
I'd recommend finishing
I'm going
first.
And we're back.
Yeah. A lot of editing in this.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is it for what is on my mind. Mike, do you have anything on your mind?
I do. A couple weeks ago, I actually saw this movie, but I haven't really had a chance to talk about it on the podcast yet. And that is How to Train Your Dragon 3. Although I don't think it's called that. It's called How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World.
Yes, it is. That is correct.
Although, really, would it have killed them to call it How to Train Your Dragon 3: The Hidden World? Does that not bother you guys a little bit? Just a sidebar real quick.
The fact that it doesn't stick with the because I think the How to Train Your Dragon 2 was just called How to Train Your Dragon 2. Now if they so
you don't change horses midstream as Wag the Dog taught me.
Yeah, exactly.
Or actually, you don't switch dragons midstream is in this situation.
Well, regardless, at least put something that matches in there. A 3 and then the subtitle. But anyway, we're getting off topic, I guess. So How to Train Your Dragon movies were movies I never really had like a great affection for. I didn't even see the second one until recently. I saw the first one when it came out. I thought it was good. And then I just never really went back. And then as the third one was coming out, I decided to watch the first one again and the second one for the first time. And I like them both. I think the first one is really good. And I think How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is also pretty good. But like the second one, does not manage to reach the heights of the first one, like at all. And it feels like this one's more geared towards children than the first two. And don't get me wrong, they're all 3 kids movies. But this one felt a lot more kid-oriented. And maybe I'm wrong in that. But I had that feeling a lot more in the third one. Especially with like the humor and the side characters.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because that's where I felt that too. That the humor was, I don't want to say like below my level in like a arrogant sense, but like below my age level.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've seen it, Chris? Have you seen How to Train Your Dragon 3? The Hidden
I sure
World?
have. Yeah.
Okay. What did you guys think of this movie as compared to the other two?
What I'll say is, I saw it in the theater and I saw it in 3D, and the 3D was fantastic. Usually I'm a proponent of not going to any 3D movies. I just try to avoid it. For some reason, the timing of this one made it so that I had to see had to see it in 3D. Mm-hmm. And I love the 3D. I thought that was fantastic. What I will say is I walked out of the movie theater loving it, and I have cooled on it since. I do think you're right. The side characters don't quite fit in there, or they don't develop the characters. So yeah, it's a solid, fun movie, but ultimately it's not. It doesn't elevate above its genre.
Yeah, I also think the villain sucks in this one again, much like in the second one.
Yeah, that's the worst part for me, was the villain. I like the villain in the second one more than this one.
They should have just brought that guy back.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing, I think, with 3, is like we had to learn about a whole new villain that wasn't a good villain, and I think having to learn about a whole new villain that second time made it worse than it was in the second one. I did actually guest on In Session podcast, or In Session Film podcast.
Good show. I like that show.
When that movie came out, to review How to Train Your Dragon 3 with them. So I've got a lot of thoughts of it that were laid out on there. As compared to the other ones, I think this one is pretty easily the weakest in the series. I actually like 2 ever so slightly better than 1.
Ooh, I think I disagree. What? Better than 1? I was going to say, I think you're going to say better than 3, and I was going to say, I think I disagree with you there, but now I just like full-fledged want to fight.
Ever so slightly. I'm not sure that it's an amount worth fighting over, but I think 1 and 2 are pretty close together.
Yeah,
in my opinion. And there were just moments that worked for me on an emotional level in 2 that I didn't have that same amount of emotional reaction as I did in 1, and I appreciated that more. Otherwise, to me, they were pretty even.
Huh. That upsets me. But
oh boy, podcast over.
I'm sorry.
I agree with you a lot of what you said, except for everything about the second one being better than the first one. But with the villain thing, I'm right there with you. I think the villain in the third one sucks, and I think I would have liked the second one better in retrospect had they brought that villain back and fleshed him out more in this one instead of making us learn a whole new villain. Yes, Chris?
Right. So sorry to interrupt, but there was a interview with the filmmaker on Slash Film, I believe it was, the daily one. And
where they talk about changing the villain.
Yeah, so they had a whole setup where it was basically the second one was going to end on a big cliffhanger, and they would bring back the second villain into the third one, and so they kind of did away with that.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be his mom, right?
Well, the villain in the second one was going to be his mom,
right? And then that would have carried over to the third one.
I think it was the villain in the second one would carry over into the third one,
which
like
was
the
his mom, would have been his mom.
No, the villain that ended up being in the second one.
Right. Yeah. Anyways, so it would have been, the cliffhanger would have been him and his mom opposing, and then in the third movie, they would have like gotten together and fought the third villain, the villain that was in the second one. Anyways, that was convoluted.
That would have been better, right? And I think bringing in a villain so late in the game in the third movie doesn't work. But all of that aside, I will say I like the ending of How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. I won't go into it here,
right?
But it's emotional, and it's emotionally rewarding. I don't know that the film entirely earns it, and sets up the idea of the end. But all that aside, the ending did move me, and so I think the third one not great, but ultimately it did make me feel something at the end, right? And it's only as I leave the movie and start like analyzing it do I start kind of coming down from that.
Right. It's emotionally pretty satisfying, and that's the best thing that it has going for it. And I think overall I do like the movie. I think it's pretty good, and I think overall it's a solid trilogy.
Yeah. Oh, as far as like kids trilogies go, is there a better kids movie trilogy that I can think of right now? I don't think so.
Toy Story maybe is competition.
Yeah, until they decided to throw a fourth one on there.
Yeah.
For now, Toy Story.
Yeah, for now, I guess Toy Story has this beat, but as soon as that fourth one comes out, no longer applies.
Yeah. Maybe the fourth one, though, will feel like, like the episode 7 or episode 1 of Star Wars, where it'll feel like it's its own new trilogy or something.
Like the beginning of a
its
new
own
trilogy.
New series. And there will be like the original Toy Story trilogy and a bunch of people that hate the new one.
Yeah, you'll have a bunch
Just
of
like
like
Star
Not
Wars.
My Woody.
That is a weird phrase.
It is, isn't it?
It's funny. Yeah.
All right.
But I think we've kind of said this, but just I think it sounds like we all would at least recommend How to Train Your Dragon 3 and just the series in general, even if we're at varying levels of liking it.
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
it seems like we all agree that it is a emotionally rewarding trilogy. It's just where the strong points are might vary for some.
Yeah. I end up ultimately liking a lot of the main characters. Of course, the main character and the dragon. But, some of the side characters get grating and stuff, but a lot of the main characters...
Oh, man. The main
throughout
character,
are
when
very
I first
likable.
saw it, back when the first How to Train Your Dragon came out, the main character, Hiccup, everything about him annoyed me. His voice, the fact that he was named Hiccup, his stupid big feet, his dumb teeth. Like
His big
everything
foot.
about that character just annoyed the crap out of me the first time I saw How to Train Your Dragon. And I didn't even like the movie that much as a result. I got bored. Like 30 minutes into it because I wasn't able to get over that hump. I don't know what was wrong with me at the time, but like going back and watching it, I liked it a lot, right? And I got used to Hiccup pretty quickly. But I must have just had a bad attitude the first time I watched it or something like that because that character just annoyed me so much.
Yeah. Did I tell you guys about my experience going to see this film? I'm pretty sure I did, but can I tell you again?
Yeah, go for it, man. Justin,
So
what was your
I went to-
experience going to see this film?
So I went to go see it, and I wanted to see it at a specific time, right? And the 3D showing at that time, or like within like 15 minutes of the time I wanted to see it, was sold out. So the 2D screening wasn't for another like hour and a half, which really like screwed up my whole day's schedule. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll buy this other thing that was called 4DX.
Oh, yeah, now I remember what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds
and
terrible.
I just want to, yeah. So I just want to mention it a little bit. There's this thing that's coming. I don't know to a bunch of theaters, but it's at least in this theater that's 5 minutes from my house, the one I go to most often. And it's called 4DX. And what it is you go in and the chairs are like grouped together in fours and they're kind of like on a thing that moves them around. So like during the movie, your chairs are moving like and going back and forth with like the camera movement or like to give you the feeling that you're like seeing from the camera or whatever to enhance that like vertigo feeling when they're flying. And then it also includes like blasts of air and water sprays and things that like poke you in your chair. Like when someone gets hit with something, like I got poked in the back.
By like a person?
No, it was like a little piece of the chair like pushed out into my back.
I know.
And, like, bumped
I just like the idea that there's
Okay.
like a theater employee like that his job is to
Just
poke
wait.
customers at the right time.
It's like just one behind each chair, like crouching. Yeah. But it also there was like lightning flashes. So when it was lightning, there were like bright strobes in the theater,
Whoa.
which was really
God,
annoying
this
and
sounds
didn't work like lightning at
Awful.
all.
This sounds so bad.
Yeah. I made it a total of like 7 minutes into the movie, and I went out and I was like, "Give me a refund." And I screwed up the rest of my day's schedule and waited like another 40 minutes to go see the film in
Yeah,
2D.
I've always heard of 4D theaters, and I've always thought they sounded stupid and gimmicky. And you've just confirmed everything that I've always suspected. So
Yeah. Well, they were cool. Like when I went to one at an amusement park, and it was a
ride.
15-minute
Yeah.
SpongeBob ride, I think is the one that I saw, right?
Exactly.
And that was fine, but for a whole movie, and especially an emotional close to a trilogy, I didn't want that.
Yeah, I heard that in some movies they actually have like smells. Did you smell anything?
Yeah, I didn't make it to a point where I smelled anything.
Oh, thank God.
but
I can't
it
imagine how
did-
disgusting that would be.
Yeah. So be wary. If you see something called 4DX, don't be dumb like me and assume that it just meant something different. I just thought it was going to be like an enhanced screen and also 3D or something like that. But
Nope.
it was much more than I bargained for.
I wonder what they would put in there as the smell of a dragon.
I don't know.
Like a
Like a fish?
like,
Like,
a,
just
like
fish?
a fish. Yeah, like something gross that smells like rotted bacteria. I don't know. It just sounds nasty.
Brimstone for a dragon, like fire.
Yeah. Just fire. Well, I imagine there was going to be like burning smells. I don't know.
Do you guys remember in the 90s whenever they made the live-action Casper movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
With Devon Sawa and Christina Ricci and Bill Pullman.
I remember the movie coming out. I don't remember what aspect of it is that applies to this situation. So
you're about to find out. So whenever they released that film in theaters, they had toys to go along with the movie. And I guess he had 3 uncles, and I don't remember their names. I think they're just like Stretch and Stinky and Fatso or something like that. I can't remember what Casper's uncles
I remember this.
Yeah. So anyway, for the character of Stinky, they actually released like a ghost doll that smelled like barf or like pizza or something. I can't remember what it was. And I never bought it, but I remember just hearing about that. Just always grossed me out. And whenever I hear of like 4D movies and stuff like that, I always just think of like, what are the grossest, nastiest, like artificial smells that they can try to like incorporate into an experience?
Yeah.
And I don't know, long road to get to that, but it just reminded me of that.
Yeah. It's not worth it. And it was a pretty expensive ticket price. Like I used my Cinemia pass on it, so it didn't matter, but it would have been like $25.
Good Lord.
To go to the 4DX one too, so
That's insane.
a lot to pay to have like a lot of noise and other crap distract you from a movie.
Was there a big crowd in that theater, or was that like a very empty showing?
There's not a ton of seats. Like there's probably like 80 seats in the theater, and it was pretty full actually. But it was a lot of kids and like kids and their dad or kids and their parents.
Yeah, and kids will think they're having fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will. Like I'm sure it's good for them, but as an adult who doesn't like to be jabbed in the back while watching a movie, not for me.
Does your seat like jerk around? Like if you had like a cup holder, like with like a drink, would it be like a dangerous thing to try and drink it?
Without a lid, you mean?
I mean, even with a lid. I mean, like how much are we moving here?
I mean, you move pretty substantially. I don't remember it being jerky to the point where I think it would slosh your drink out. Like it vibrates and will shake a little bit, but then like the movements are, I think, pronounced and not so jerky that you'll spill everything on you. But that did cross my mind. I was like, how much crazier is this going to get?
Yeah, especially in some of those dragon flying scenes.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That is it on How to Train Your Dragon 3.
All right, cool. Before we move on, just real quick, one last thing I will say is, even though the movie itself didn't work as well as like the first one did, I will say that it is beautiful. Like some of the shots of like him flying the dragon and like the camera work that they have going on in this cartoon is beautiful, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah, totally agree. The animation is great. I think it's good across all of them, but this one was definitely a step up.
Yeah, even going back to the first one, I was surprised at how good the animation looked, like the hair and the fur of like their cloaks and stuff, you know, like their Viking fur cloaks. All that still holds up, but the third one, just some of it, like if they weren't like animated, goofy looking people and dragons, some of it would look real, like shots of the ocean and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so I think that wraps it up for How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World. Sounds like we all recommend it. And if you guys saw the movie, write us in. Let us know if we're wrong about any of it or, if, I don't know, whatever. Write it in.
Any opinion on it whatsoever, send it in.
Yeah, there you go. All right, are we done with what's on our mind?
Yes.
Yep.
I am.
Okay. So with that, I think it is time to move into our review of Captain Marvel.
Let's go.
Grunge is a good look for you.
Did you have a rough day, Agent Fury?
I'm gonna need clarification on this space invasion.
Skrulls are infiltrating your planet. They're shapeshifters.
Okay, prove you're not a Skrull.
That's a photon blast.
And?
A Skrull cannot do that.
I'm just supposed to take your word for that. We are Kree. Strong, united. You have to let go of the past.
I don't remember my past.
Control it.
I have this power, but I don't know where it came from.
I've never seen anything like her.
You think you can find others?
She's just the beginning.
All right, so as always, before we get going on Captain Marvel, wanted to let you guys know that at first we'll be speaking very generally about the film. We won't be giving any spoilers away. And before we move into our spoiler section, we will give you a nice noticeable not ignorable spoiler alert.
Sizable.
So sizable, loud. We'll pump up the volume on it so it's super loud. And then you'll know that we're about to go into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film yet, at that point you can pause the podcast, go see the film, come back and finish listening.
However, I will add on to what Justin just said. We will be spoiling probably all the MCU movies up to this point, including Infinity War. Maybe not all of them, but like it might come up. So
Yeah, so go watch the last 20 movies, and then...
Well, let's just say Infinity War specifically. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
All right. So, Captain Marvel was directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, starring Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, and Ben Mendelsohn. The IMDb synopsis says, Carol Danvers becomes one of the universe's most powerful heroes when the Earth is caught in the middle of a galactic war between two alien races.
Just a Wednesday for me.
Yeah, well, you need to be an Avenger then, Chris. You're in the wrong line of work.
I applied. They rejected it, but let's not talk about that.
How embarrassing. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I can start off, unless you guys wanted to.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, go for it.
Okay. So my expectations going into this movie were that I would get, at worst, a standard MCU origin tale, or at best, another movie on the level of Black Panther, or the first Iron Man, or some of the Captain America movies, all of which I consider to be pretty fun. There are some other origin tales in this franchise as of late that have not done it for me quite as much, and I'm thinking of like Doctor Strange or Ant-Man, neither of which I think are bad, but both just pretty formulaic at this point. So my expectations were kind of between those 2 points, standard or good. I was pretty sure that Disney and Marvel were at this point not going to release anything awful. And I think that's what we got. I think this movie is pretty good. I'm not sure if it's exceptional or even in my personal top third of all the MCU movies if I had to rank them. But if you like this franchise and you like the MCU, I don't think you will be disappointed in Captain Marvel. The way the story unfolds is a little more complicated structurally than most of the movies in the MCU. A lot of the drama in the film actually comes from Carol Danvers trying to figure out everything that has happened to her, which can be, refreshingly quiet at certain points in this movie. And it takes some time to breathe, which I appreciate. And you don't get that in a lot of MCU protagonists. I think Brie Larson is doing a good job here with everything she needs to do. She has a screen presence about her, and I've always thought she was a really talented actress. That said, I think my biggest complaint about the movie is that I don't really have an understanding of Captain Marvel as a character. Like, I don't really understand her personality yet. So I'm interested to see her in like the other Marvel movies going forward, to kind of see how she interacts with the other heroes and stuff. Because I had a similar problem with Doctor Strange when that movie first came out. I didn't really like Doctor Strange, and then I liked him more in Infinity War. So I'm wondering if the same thing will happen with Captain Marvel. So, Justin, what did you think of Captain Marvel?
Well, normally I'm not that interested in the Marvel movies, and the trailers for this one didn't really do much for me, but, not many of the trailers ever did, so I don't, that's for what it's worth.
What were you expecting?
Yeah. But I was more hopeful for this one than I normally am, because I did like Black Panther quite a bit, and I liked Infinity War. Both were pretty good, and I tend to prefer all of the origin story films to any of the sequels or the Avengers films as a whole.
Right.
So that got me excited, because I was excited to see another origin film, especially for like a character I know nothing about, which is kind of the same thing with Black Panther, right? Like, I didn't know anything about Black Panther. I didn't know anything about Captain Marvel.
Right.
Whereas like, an Iron Man or Captain America or Spider-Man origin story is a little less interesting just because I know those stories, right? So I will say that overall, I really enjoyed this movie. Even though I have my issues with it, on the whole, it was pretty enjoyable. And so I just kind of bullet point, and I'm just going to start with the negative so that I can end positive, because that's a little bit more fun.
Sure.
So starting with the negative, I think the action is fairly bland.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite understand Captain Marvel's powers. At times, she seemed invincible, and at those times, it was boring to me, because an invincible superhero is a little boring to me. I think it has a pretty weak villain, especially compared to the more recent Marvel outings. And I struggled to connect with the stuff in space before we actually go back to Earth, like the opening 15 minutes of the film. But once I got past that, I really started to enjoy it. There are lots of performances that I enjoyed. The highlight for me was not included in the list that we read earlier. It's Lashana Lynch as her friend.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting.
I thought she was really, really good. And there's more that I can talk about that once we get to spoilers, but I really liked her a lot. The humor worked in this more often than not, particularly the back and forth between Sam Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn, or the Skrulls and the cat. I thought was
oh my god,
really
anything
funny.
Ben Mendelsohn did, I was on board for this whole movie.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Yeah. It was very, very funny. There's some that didn't work, and most of that for me falls on the stuff that Brie Larson says that's supposed to be funny, and I put that to her performance because I think it's not a super charismatic performance, but for certain reasons, I think it's a bit intentional, which we'll get into later, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
But regardless of that, her character's journey as a whole is, to me, one of the most interesting and one of the best that I can think of out of any of the origin stories. I really enjoyed her journey as a character and where she went from point A to point B and the change that she underwent. I thought was really, really interesting. So yeah, those are basically my points. It's a little bit of a mixed bag, but I did like this film. I think it's, I really don't know my Marvel ranking off the top of my head, but I would say it's definitely on the higher end. So
nice.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Despite all the things that bothered me, it's mostly things bothering me looking back, because while watching it, I was pretty well enjoying it. So Chris, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty close to where you guys are at. I've been excited to see Captain Marvel for some time now. Ever since Avengers Infinity War, I've been looking forward to whatever content I can get from this franchise. And it's co-directed by the same team that did Half Nelson, which is pretty interesting. And I was very much looking forward to seeing if they could bring any of their independent spirit to a big blockbuster film. Yeah.
They also did... have any of you guys seen It's Kind of a Funny Story that they did with the mental institution movie?
No,
I have I never saw it.
I really like that one. Just a sidebar. So I didn't realize they directed it beforehand, but had I known that, I would have been excited because of Half Nelson and that film.
Yeah. Yeah, and just like you guys, I think I had a few problems. I have to mention, and neither one of you guys have called it out yet, but the de-aging technology is pretty amazing. It's
I would say one out of the two on display are pretty amazing, and then one of them is not.
Yeah. Well, we can talk a little bit more about that later, but
But yeah, Samuel L. Jackson looked great.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson looked amazing, is what I would say. And yeah, and then it's ultimately just a fun movie that has a few drawbacks, right? For me, I think they did maybe 3 or 4 too many 90s jokes. Some of the music placements and stuff like that were kind of weird.
Right.
Or they just kind of hit you over the head with, this is a 90s movie. And, once you get the third one, you're like, okay, I get it. I think it also has a lot of big implications for the MC universe, and what it's going to be going forward. And I also have to touch on the Brie Larson thing. And yeah, I think Brie Larson's performance is good for the character in this movie. And I actually wrote exactly the same thing that you just said, Mike. And that was, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next movies with this character, because I think for where this character is in this movie, it was hard for Brie Larson to show a lot of character, because in the movie she doesn't necessarily know who she is, right? So it's a fine line to walk there. So right. I'm kind of withholding judgment until the next movie or so, or maybe there should have been a little bit more there. But I think Samuel L. Jackson and her teaming up kind of make up for that. This movie.
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, I kind of know what you mean, but keep going.
This movie's already made, buttloads of money this weekend. But if you're one of the few holdouts and you like the MC universe, I don't understand why you haven't seen it yet. Go see it. Now, if you don't like the MC universe or comic book films in general, this one isn't necessarily for you. I don't think it rises above the genre too much to make a special trip for it if you're already not into it. But if you're into it, you've probably already seen it. So, yeah. That is my thought.
On a counterpoint to that, just very briefly, my fiance Nicole went with me to see it, and it took a little convincing to get her to go because she does not like the Marvel movies at all and has no interest in it. and she really enjoyed it. She thought it surprised her, I guess, and she thought it was very funny and very enjoyable.
Awesome.
She said she'd give it a 7/8 out of 10. So
Wow.
maybe in some ways, I think it does transcend it, if for no other reason than, it's the first female-led Marvel movie, right? I know we've had other female superheroes, but in the Marvel universe, but this is the first one that had its own movie.
Right.
And there's actually one more thing I forgot to mention, and that was how I really enjoyed the origin story of this. And you would think after so many origin stories, I'd be tired of it. And I think what they did well in this film is they kind of put a twist on the origin story and made it new and interesting for me.
Yeah, well, I agree.
That's kind of what I was hinting on earlier. I was like, it structurally is a little different than most of them, and I think that helps. I first wanted to kind of comment a little bit on what Justin said, because I have the exact opposite reaction to her friend character. Like her friend Maria Rambo, or whatever her name was.
Yeah, I don't know her name either.
Yeah, I think
right.
that's a character name, Maria Rambo. I don't know that person was the strongest actress. Like, I enjoyed the friendship, and I appreciate that. Like, I had like the conscious thought as seeing it. I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen two women in the MCU who are friends with one another. Like, I just don't think that we've seen that yet. So it felt like a good relationship to see. We need it and everything. And I don't know if it's the acting so much, but like, it seems like a lot of people are presented with some pretty heavy knowledge in this movie, and they are rolling with it real fast without much questioning. And I know that's for our benefit, right? Like, we don't want to see 20 movies into it. We don't want to see Captain Marvel explain that there's like aliens in the world. But her friend Maria Rambo doesn't know that. And Nick Fury before this movie doesn't know that. And every time someone's hit with like this knowledge, it's like, I don't know, like if someone had done that in like the first Iron Man, I feel like it would have been a bigger deal, right? If someone had found out there was aliens. And
right.
This movie chronologically takes place before that, and everyone who finds out about it is just kind of like, whoa, I can't believe you're back. And it's just like, that's it? That's all we're getting? And so I found that to be kind of unsatisfying, just on like a basic storytelling level. But that's pretty minor. But I don't know. What did you guys think of that?
I don't know that that's something I would put on the actors' performances.
I don't know if it's something I would put on the actors' performances either, but I don't know.
I guess, Mike, it seemed like you agreed with me on the action and whatnot. Chris, how did you feel about the action?
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. The action,
okay.
There may be like once or twice that it was pretty good, but ultimately it was not great.
Yeah. And I hear that a lot of what happens is like Marvel will get these indie directors. Like they'll get like a Ryan Coogler, or they'll get, the people who did Half Nelson who directed this movie, or they'll get Taika Waititi, They'll get these directors who have made nothing but indie movies, and then they'll get them to get good performances, but it seems like they have their own in-house people that want to handle all the action. And they don't want to let these directors come in and actually like create the action themselves. So the action in all these MCU movies has the same voice and no uniqueness about it,
Yeah. It's I think it's not that great. I feel like they're going to have to do something about that relatively soon, but maybe not.
I think the movie that has the best, or like I think like of all the MCU movies, the ones that with the action that comes to the forefront of my brain are like moments from the first Iron Man, the first Avengers, and then Infinity War. The rest of it is all just 18 movies of subpar action, in my opinion. And that's coming from the person on the podcast, I think, who likes the MCU the most. But I also like action movies and can tell you that these movies are phoning it in the action movie department.
Right. And I don't know that it's fair to give credit to Doctor Strange because they're just in such a weird world. That action stands out to me, but just because it's so different.
That's fair. I think the Russos, though, the movies where the Russos take charge, I think that's the movies with like the strongest sense of like action. That's like Captain America's 2 and 3, and then Infinity War.
Yeah,
I think
that's what I was thinking.
They're really good at like physical action. Like when Chris Evans kicks somebody off a boat in Captain America 2, it looks like he kicked someone off a boat. You know what I mean? It doesn't look like they're on some green screen nowhere.
Yeah.
Real quick, one of the things I appreciated about this movie was the world building. I think the characters ultimately kind of fall flat the same way they did in Guardians 1, but I do appreciate them bringing back Ronan and that one guy who starts out as a Kree in this movie. Or I guess he's in the poster as a Kree. So like those two characters are both in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. So I kind of appreciate, just from like a world building standpoint, the idea of fleshing out the MCU a few years ago to kind of help, in retrospect, fill in gaps that were left by their current movies, which might be like a problem to the casual viewer. But like, as someone who appreciates big franchises, like I like this in Star Wars, I like this in Game of Thrones, like I like big world building, So I really appreciate when the MCU tries to expand their world and set stuff up for the future. And I don't know, I appreciate all that serialized storytelling like that.
Yeah, they really stick to it too. I think The Hangar is the one from the original Avenger film.
Exactly. Yeah, that was so cool.
Pegasus is mentioned in a previous film as well, and a couple of things like that. So I like that you're right, Mike, that they stick to it and that there's a logic to the world. They follow their own rules, right?
Exactly. And it just kind of fleshes out things that like were slight before. Like I think Ronan in this movie and Ronan in Guardians 1, on their own, neither of those villains are very satisfying. But when you take a step back as a whole, every time we get a new piece of the story, I feel like it makes the storytelling better in retrospect, which maybe is cheating, but I appreciate that about these like big franchises like this, that they can do something like that.
Right. And as someone who didn't pick up on any of those things, they don't shove it in your face or like detract from the film itself, because I didn't even know I was supposed to be getting anything or have like any moment where I was like, oh, I don't get that and I don't understand.
Right. Well,
so it works without knowing that stuff.
Yeah. If you go back and watch the first Guardians again, you're going to notice at least two characters that are in this movie that will now have new origins and new context next time you watch Guardians.
Awesome.
So the other thing before we move into spoilers that I had was, I mentioned it earlier, but I just wanted to call out my boy Ben Mendelsohn.
Yeah.
Who consistently knocks it out of the park in everything he's in. And I was scared that in this movie, I was like, oh, is this just another one of him doing the same thing he's been doing for the past couple years, And then shortly into the movie, I realized it was not that. And I think he's funny. And I cannot wait for his character to come back in other MCU movies in the future, because he made me laugh like 3 separate times.
Yeah.
Yeah. He made me laugh a lot too. And I didn't even know it was Ben Mendelsohn until the credits.
He does a great job.
Yeah, he's in it at one point in the elevator as himself.
Yeah. And the autopsy. The other thing that he does really well is acts under all that makeup, Yeah,
and actually has a personality under all that makeup.
Right. He does a really great job.
And everything between him and Sam Jackson, like giving each other crap. Like,
oh man, yeah.
The one part where they're going to space, is that a spoiler?
Let's just get the spoilers. Let's just get the spoilers.
Okay.
All right.
Let's just go to spoilers then.
Let's do it and then finish that thought.
Okay.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any more cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
All right, now that we're in spoilers, that one part where everybody's going to space in the spaceship, and Sam Jackson's like, is this normal space turbulence? And I guess it's, someone says like, yeah. And then Ben Mendelsohn is just, the cuts to him and he's just shaking his head no.
Right. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, no. No, it's not.
Yeah. And I like how, like, he's the only one that knows the cat's not like a normal cat. And like Samuel L. Jackson's like loving on it and like shoving it in Ben Mendelsohn's face the whole time. And like, and he's very respectful, right? Like Ben Mendelsohn, he's not like, get that alien out of my face. Like he's very like, ugh. Like he just keeps like leaning away and gets uncomfortable. It's just,
that works better than anger too. Like it's like not like he's offended. He's just that uneasy around the cat.
Yeah. He's just
like
that
he just can't. He kind of tenses up.
Yeah, he's just like,
freezes.
bro, I don't know if you know what you're doing. And last thing with Ben Mendelsohn that struck is the whole time they're like teasing like Nick Fury's gonna lose his eye. Like how's it gonna happen? And like each time he's like, my eye's fine. And then like later like the alien cat scratches him like a little bit, and he's like, oh, it's fine, no big deal. And then like it cuts to Ben Mendelsohn, and he's like, nope.
Yeah, he just shakes his head. Yeah,
it's like it's not okay.
On that note, do we want to talk a little bit about the villain thing? Because I think that Ben Mendelsohn was a pretty interesting villain, although by the end of the film he's not the villain, and we have a more main villain in Jude Law.
Right.
But I really like just the whole change, and I guess it's something they did in Deadpool 2, which isn't totally part of the MCU, but they kind of had a bad guy for the first half of the movie.
Right, yeah.
And then you realize you're on the same side, and there's kind of a clash of characters. Like it worked again for me. I really like that, even if I didn't like the other villain that we ended up getting.
Yeah. To me, it was always really obvious that Jude Law was going to be a villain. So like, I didn't really think about it that way, but like I was pleasantly surprised when Ben Mendelsohn turned out to not be a villain, because between Rogue One and Ready Player One, and I'm sure something else, like I don't want to see him play a villain. He's too likable for me to have to not like him in every movie he's in.
Walking into this movie, I thought, oh, Ben Mendelsohn's the villain again. And then the one time, as soon as Ronan shows up, I'm like, oh, maybe he's not the villain, you know?
Yeah. Which, by the way, that's Lee Pace. Did you recognize that, Justin? From The Fall?
Only in the end credits.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually reviewed a movie called The Fall with him last week. So that's why I bring that up to anyone confused.
I thought it was funny. I was like, well, that's coincidental, I guess. But to Jude Law, do you guys like him as a villain? Do you guys not like him? I think he's just kind of that. I got this like sort of doing evil for evil's sake sense.
He is the male equivalent of Brie Larson in this movie, which is that the performance is good.
Yes.
The character leaves me wanting.
And part of that's because of the twist, right?
No,
you don't think so?
Not really. I mean, like I don't know how that would have made Jude Law more. I wasn't interested in Jude Law before he was the villain, when I knew he was going to eventually become the villain. You know?
Right. Just what I mean is that they can't reveal too much about Jude Law without giving away the twist, right? So they have to kind of hold their cards back until the twist.
You know, but I think what would have made me like either of these characters more isn't so much giving me more time with them explaining what they want or exposition, but just quiet moments or personality moments. Like, like Tony Stark, he always has like a quick witticism every time. Same with Doctor Strange. Captain America always has something noble to say, or you know what I mean? Thor these days is something funny. Captain Marvel, it's like she doesn't have a go-to response. It's like sometimes she's sarcastic, sometimes she's nice, sometimes she's mean
and cocky.
Yeah, sometimes she's arrogant. Sometimes
she makes a lot of jokes I guess like in the middle of fighting and stuff like that. But to me, none of that really worked. So
right.
It was weird.
Like I said earlier, I'm anxious to see her like in Endgame. Like when she shows up in Endgame and she has to like talk to Rocket Raccoon. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
The characters that have the most life to them are the side characters. They're the Ben Mendelsohns and the Sam Jacksons. Those are the characters that I feel like I understand. But granted, I already knew Nick Fury. But we see Nick Fury be a lot sillier in this one than we ever have, you know?
Right. I do think they did some interesting things with the character of Jude Law as far as kind of gaslighting Brie Larson and calling in their themes, you know, like
with like the control your emotions and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just telling her a lie and telling her that she doesn't necessarily know what's true rings very much like an abusive situation, right?
Yeah.
Which it obviously is.
Yeah.
And her having to stand up strong against that. It rings true and powerful to me, even if I don't get much of a personality from either one of them.
I agree.
But, yeah.
I agree. And what I will say to that is, at first, that arc confused me. Like, when the movie was going on and, like, the little chip in the back of her head breaks, you know? Mm-hmm. And then, like, she's like, I don't have anything to prove to you. I'm super powerful, and I don't need to be taught a lesson. I thought that was weak at first. I was like, okay, so her arc is that she needs to learn how to control her powers because she gets too emotional and can't control them. And then her arc is, oh, wait, never mind. I don't need to do anything different. I'm badass. Fuck you. Like, that seems to be the arc. And I didn't think that was super satisfying. And I still don't to an extent. But I think the better way to look at it isn't so much that she never needed to control her powers. She was only told that by him because he didn't want her to be better than him.
Yeah, exactly.
But initially, my thought was like, what, she doesn't need to learn anything? That's lame. And I still kind of think it would be better if she had to learn something herself, like a flaw in herself to make better, because that's a typical arc.
Well, wasn't that there? Like she's strong on her own type of thing, you know, like
I didn't think, like, I understand what they're saying because like women get told they're emotional a lot. So it's like, that's like the point they're making, right?
Mm-hmm.
she's
Right.
being told she needs to control her emotions when in reality she doesn't. There's nothing wrong with women being emotional. I get that. That's all a good arc to have. But as far as a hero's origin story goes, I don't think that the origin story of someone who was awesome all along, it just seems a little lacking.
Well, see, I disagree with that because while you find it lacking, I find it fresh. That particular journey, because it's kind of the reverse of what we normally get in a superhero movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, normally we go from a normal human who realizes that they have more potential or gets a superpower and they have to learn to deal with it. Whereas she starts the film as basically part of like a warrior military alien race, and she thinks she's that race and she knows she has this power that's crazy, but then she learns she's actually human and maybe lesser than, and like, but then has to realize that regardless of all of that, she's still super powerful. And for me that worked, and that is one of the things that I like most about the movie, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. Agree to disagree, I guess. I don't know. I see what you're saying, and like I do acknowledge that it is unique. And I think if I had a better handle on how powerful she is, or what her limits are, that'd be different. Because I think with like the origin story with Iron Man, we had a pretty good idea what he was capable of, because like the whole journey we saw him like building his powers. This journey, it's like she has powers. We kind of get a grasp on them, and at the end of the movie, she learned she's awesome, and she was being controlled the whole time. And then she's a god, essentially. And you kind of mentioned this earlier, which is like you don't really understand how powerful she is. Whereas like if we got to learn these powers with her, or we had some kind of scene where she's like, okay, I am awesome all along, but there's still limits. Like I don't know. Like I'm sure we'll learn about her limits as like in Captain Marvel 2 or whatever. In an origin story, until I see more from her, I'm not 100% like satisfied the way I was with like Black Panther.
No. Well, I'm with you in the sense that we jump from her being able to like shoot stuff and like punch things really hard to her being able to fly and all kinds of crazy stuff with the energy that she hasn't previously shown any inkling of. Yeah, I'm with you that we take a large step from there, and how we got to that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I think it's wrapped up in her character. Like I think with these origin stories, like the character needs to grow with the powers. And
if maybe there was more character in the film from her, like maybe it would be more satisfying.
Yeah, I guess like I'd like to see more examples, and this is probably stuff that would have happened previously, times where she has exploded with her power, before we see her in this movie. Like the reasons that Jude Law is trying to tell her, like, you need to control yourself and harness your power. It's all stuff that's happened before. Yeah, seeing some of that would be good, I think. But just not, in terms of character, it all worked. That part works for me. And I think if you guys don't have any more on that, we can kind of pivot to Lashana Lynch.
Let's go for it.
So when they go to visit her and we get Lashana Lynch's side of the story and her talking about what happened, that's filling in a lot of like the memories for Brie Larson's character. And I was on the same bus that you were, Mike, and I think maybe we all were a little bit, is like struggling to connect with her character. But it wasn't until the scene with Lashana Lynch where she's talking to her about her being gone, the scene where it's just the two of them at the table, and that's when I was finally connecting with everything that was going on. Like I thought her performance was really good and actually made me feel something and made me get connected to these characters. And for that's one of the reasons why like her performance and that scene kind of changed my emotion that I was feeling, or changed my lack of emotion to emotion. So that's one reason like why I think she really stands out for me.
Yeah, I agree about the daughter. I mean, I know you didn't bring up the daughter, but like all those same points you said, I feel towards the daughter character more than the mom character. When she's talking to Brie Larson and they're like talking, like I believe that like this little girl idolized, Carol Danvers a long time ago and has genuinely missed her.
Yeah, I think it is a bit of that, the daughter as well. Like it's just like that whole sequence is where the film really started clicking for me. And maybe I'm putting a lot on Lashana Lynch and not putting enough on the daughters, but the daughter definitely is part of it for sure. The one thing I want to say, and this could have gone in non-spoilers, but I disagree with Chris, a comment that you made about the overly 90s stuff.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I didn't feel that there was too much of it. I know there was maybe 4 to 5 prominent songs.
I think "I'm Just a Girl" is the worst thing in the movie.
Yeah, and I'm talking about the songs, and like she crash lands into a Blockbuster. She goes and asks the cop, "Hey, where's your radio communications?" And then he points at Radio Shack, and like I didn't necessarily need the Radio Shack joke. I got that she was in the 90s with the Blockbuster, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. And I don't know that it matters that much. It's just that my patience with it was shorter than yours, probably.
Yeah, because I was like, within like 2 or 3 minutes of her landing in the 90s, you were already over establishing
you're already
that she's
over
in the
the
90s.
references.
That's a little harsh in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, okay.
I understand that if the joke doesn't work. That's okay.
Yeah.
I like the
I'm with
Mallrats
you
one
that-
with Stan Lee.
But then it also continues on top of that, so that's kind of my thing.
Yeah.
I did like the Stan Lee cameo, the Mallrats. I thought that was funny, even though I guess it's part of the 90s references. But yeah.
Yeah, to me, the only one that really was like egregiously on the nose and bad and would have made the movie better without it is the "I'm Just a Girl" by No Doubt playing during like the pretty subpar fight scene at the end. Right.
And for me, it was the only thing that made the fight scene above par because I just really like that song, and I always have.
Maybe, but it's pretty on the nose.
Yeah. I can't argue with you on that. That is totally true. It is right there hanging out on it. Do you guys want to talk about the mid-credit scene now?
Yeah, but there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is basically Captain Marvel is now the Superman of the MCU universe, and I think they are going to have to do something because she basically blows up a ship on her own. She just flies through it, right? So in order to keep her interesting, they're going to have to do some interesting things.
Oh, Kevin Feige has already talked about how they're going to rein her in. Like her next journeys will be exploring her limits.
Okay, that'd be interesting. And they're definitely going to have to do something along those lines. Otherwise, you kind of get that Superman problem where she's just too powerful and there's not a lot of suspense. He'll just fly around the earth.
That was the most unsatisfying thing to me, is that she could like do anything she wanted to, like stop a nuclear bomb and chunk it back at the other ones. And yeah, as you said, Chris, fly through a ship was the big one where I was like, she is really, really strong, if not invincible, and can do whatever she wants.
I found it satisfying, but at the same time I realized that, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future.
Right. Well, you don't want it to end up being like, how do we take this person out of the fight right away so the rest of the movie can begin, right? Like, this happens in every kind of like story where there's an ultimately powerful character, like every comic book movie, every comic book story about the Justice League, they need to start out with like, how is Superman taken out of the fight?
Right.
Like, where is he? You know what I mean? Or like,
he's got the kryptonite this time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's sick. Or like you get like a Dragon Ball Z reference. Why is Goku not in the fight right away? Like, what is he doing for the first 30 episodes so that we can bust him out at the end of the season?
Right. Yeah. You definitely don't want it to end up like that. So I am very, very curious about that as well.
Cool. That's what I had.
Yeah. So
right.
Credits sequences.
Yeah. Mid-credit sequences, which I guess is the big, really important one. I think this might be the worst mid-credit scene because it didn't really show us anything or like surprise us with anything. It just kind of confirmed what we already knew. And I kind of like the ones that give us something like, oh, I wonder what that's about, or I wonder what's going to happen with that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I was expecting that. The one, the after credit sequence before an Avengers movie is always just like a basic scene / tease for the Avengers movie.
It might even be pulled directly from the movie.
Yeah, maybe so. But yeah, I agree with you. It's nothing more than just to tease the movie coming out next month.
That's unsatisfying to me. Like, I liked, was it Infinity War or Black Panther? I think it was Infinity War where like the mid-credit scene was Bucky from the Captain America movies.
Is Black Panther is where he like wakes up and he's got one arm in Wakanda?
Yeah.
That's Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
See, like I mean, I didn't see that coming. And it kind of, I don't know that anyone else did. Maybe it's as obvious as this Captain Marvel thing was.
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's like that sequence was kind of pointless because it was set up in another movie. It's just kind of reconfirming something. So like, I think it's more the same, to be honest. Like we didn't need the Bucky scene because we already knew he was in Wakanda being fixed up because we knew from Captain America Civil War. So all that Black Panther scene does was be like, tease, he will be, like, it's just basically confirming something that wasn't said. So this is kind of the same thing, right? Which is like, we saw the pager thing set up in Infinity War, so we don't need this scene where she responds to the page. But
yeah,
I think
it's just a payoff.
It's just one of those things where it's like, oh my God, she's in the same frame as Scarlett Johansson. You know, like, she's there.
Which is a bummer to me. Whether it's justified as being the worst. Maybe it's not the worst. I'll take that back.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, though.
It's just like other ones.
It's just kind of standard.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the second one?
Loved it. It was funny. I like the idea of making us sit through an entirely long credit sequence because there's so many people that work on the movie just to watch a cat hawk up a Tesseract. I think that's funny.
Then let me tell you, you need to watch Spider-Man Homecoming.
Okay.
That's got my favorite after credits joke.
Yeah. I just like when they do that. It's kind of like Andy Kaufman-esque of like,
yeah, I agree.
Not giving you what you want or giving you something completely unsatisfying, like when he did the college tour and read the entirety of The Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've actually been doing that the past couple of years on some of their like final credit sequences, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, usually those are the jokes.
Yeah, but this one's not even a joke though, right? Like,
yeah, it's just silly.
it's just a cat hawking it up. Like this,
Yeah, I would like to see, I'm sure there's already like a million YouTube videos on this. I would like to like watch a YouTube video about the journey of that Tesseract in chronological order. Like starting with Captain America through the time like Thanos breaks it open to stick the stone on it, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
that is actually one thing.
Yeah, we just realized this thing switched hands more times in this movie. Like before this movie, I think we just knew that like Howard Stark found it in the water, right? And then it was just kind of hanging out with S.H.I.E.L.D. until Loki came to get it.
That is actually a thing that I'm looking forward to once the Endgame is over and hopefully they move on from the Tesseract because it's been 10 years of where's the Tesseract. So it'll be interesting to move on from that.
Yeah, but I do admire how they keep using the same MacGuffins, and sometimes you don't even realize they're the same MacGuffin until you actually see it. Like they can be talking about it the whole time. And then you're like, oh, it's that goddamn thing that we've been following around since 2010.
Time for a new MacGuffin.
I'm sad that this cat, who I assume is like a regular cat, will be long dead before
I assume he's
like the current timeline.
I assumed that like 90% of the shots were always completely CGI cat.
Yeah, actually, I listened to a podcast.
Is there even a real cat?
I can't.
There is at some point, I think.
Yeah, but I can't put my finger on what podcast it was, but it was some MCU expert talking about all this. And so there's actually an alien race called, I think they're Flurbergs or something like that. I probably got that wrong, but
Flurkian, I think it was in the movie. They talked about it.
Yeah, Ben Mendelsohn calls it that whenever Samuel Jackson
so they aren't
loving
cats that are aliens, or like it's not an alien that's inhabiting a cat. They're just aliens that look like cats.
That's funny.
Yeah. But there also are cats that exist that are just cats as we know them.
Right, on Earth, yes, like Earth cats, I suppose.
Okay, so this might be a whatever it's called.
Yeah, so it could still
alien
be alive.
That it could still be alive. Good. I want that cat back. I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they'll bring it back. It's a hit. I'm sure Ben Mendelsohn and that cat are both coming back.
I hope so.
Good. Sign me up.
Yeah. So does anyone have anything else about Captain Marvel?
I do not. I am all out of things.
Yeah, I'm good. Can't wait for Endgame in a month or so.
Yeah. Are we more looking forward to Endgame? Less? About the same?
I'm the same, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm the same. I was going to see Endgame no matter what. And I don't know that it brings anything new to the Endgame story.
Well, I don't know. I am, I think, looking forward to Endgame more because like I said earlier, and like I've been saying the whole thing, I want to see Captain Marvel handled further out in more situations where I can kind of
that's true.
peg her personality more. Like I said earlier, I didn't really like Doctor Strange at first until Infinity War. And now I like Doctor Strange more in retrospect because I know he was handled in Infinity War pretty well. And now I kind of have a handle on like, okay, this is what he's like and this is how he's different than Tony Stark, So like with each hero, I just kind of want to know what they bring to the table, How is their personality different? How will it be interesting whenever they interact with the heroes that I already like? You know?
Good point.
Right.
Overall,
I can understand that.
yeah, I give it 3.5 out of 5. What are you guys sitting at?
The exact same, literally.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I gave it 3.
3 out of 5.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
I'm right there. I think it's middle, but we'll see how I feel in a week.
Yeah,
Maybe go up to
just
3.5.
talking about it with you guys makes me like it more. I don't know that I want to see it again in theaters or anything, but I do look forward to seeing it again one day. Maybe before Captain Marvel 2 comes out.
Right.
Yeah, it's so close I don't need to watch it again before Endgame, but yeah, maybe one day if I need to catch up.
Yeah. Or just, catch things I missed. Because there's a lot of, Easter eggs in all these movies. So anyway, that's where I come down.
Cool. Well, I think that does it for the show then.
Yes. Thanks for sticking
Agreed.
it out.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. And of course, as always, thanks Jake Wagner-Russell for doing our intro and outro music. You can hear more of his music at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
Stay tuned to this channel. Our next episode will be over the new Netflix thriller, Triple Frontier.
Ooh.
Yeah, directed by J.C. Chandor, who directed A Most Violent Year, which we just put an episode out about upon listener request.
Yeah. That's also coincidental? Much like Lee Pace in Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
So everything's just connecting.
The
it's all
stars
too eerie
have
now.
aligned.
Yeah. All right, if you want to send us your questions for us to answer on Triple Frontier, was that the name of the movie?
Yes, it
I
is.
couldn't remember. Okay. All right, so if you want to send us your questions on Triple Frontier for us to answer on the show, or just your thoughts on it in general, remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at CasualCinecast.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. I can't wait to see you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Have a marvelous day.
I didn't know we were going to hang out later. This is either you're messing with me, I'm going to be disappointed, or I'm genuinely excited.
Be excited.
He's on his way.
Yeah.